They walk among us every day, silent in a world that thrives on noise. Not because they lack thoughts or feelings, but because the weight of their inner world demands respect. You've seen him before, standing slightly apart at gatherings, nodding when spoken to, speaking only when necessary, each word measured, deliberate. In a culture that equates talking with power, he often goes unnoticed, mistaken for aloofness, indifference, or even coldness. But beneath that calm exterior lies a mind alive with observation, reflection, and understanding. There is a particular kind of wisdom that comes from restraint. The quiet man has discovered something most people never understand, that words, when used without care, can scatter meaning like sand in the wind. He has learned that to speak is to risk being misunderstood, and that silence, when intentional, carries authority. His quietness is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the stillness before insight, the pause before truth. While others rush to fill rooms with noise, he shapes the atmosphere with his mere being. And often, the weight of what he does not say is felt more profoundly than anything spoken aloud. To understand such a man, one must first look inward through the lens of personality and temperament. Many are naturally inclined to solitude, not shyness, but introspection. Psychologists call it introversion, a preference not for isolation, but for internal engagement. Where extroverts draw energy from interaction, the quiet man replenishes his spirit in stillness. He thinks deeply, weighs perspectives, and processes emotions before giving them a voice. This is not indecision or weakness. It is discernment. When he chooses to speak, his words resonate. Each syllable is a fragment of thought refined over time, tested against reality, polished by experience. It is not enough to simply speak. To him, words must serve purpose. Observation is his constant companion. While others talk to be heard, he watches to understand. He notices the subtle shifts in tone, the micro-expressions, the language of hands and eyes. These details, overlooked by many, inform his understanding of people and situations. It is this attentiveness that lends him a quiet confidence, a power that is rarely recognized but always present. The world may misread it as distance, but in truth it is comprehension. He knows the value of information, the danger of assumptions, and the truth that awareness often surpasses speech in influence. Yet quietness is not always born of personality alone. Sometimes it is shaped by life's lessons, by experience, and by pain. A man may have once spoken freely, only to discover that his words were used against him, dismissed, or twisted. Vulnerability, he learned, comes at a high cost. So he retreated inward, not in defeat, but as a protective strategy. His silence became sanctuary, a place where thought could exist without distortion, where feelings could breathe without interference. Trauma, disappointment, and the harsh realities of human interaction often mold a man into one who speaks less. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he has learned that speaking recklessly can erode peace. Stoicism also weaves its threads into the quiet man's demeanor. From the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, he may have drawn an unconscious lesson, that mastery over speech is mastery over self. Every unnecessary word is energy lost. Every impulsive reaction, a surrender of control. Silence, in this sense, is not merely absence, it is assertion. By speaking less, he asserts thought over noise, reflection over impulse, calm over chaos. His restraint is not timidity, it is deliberate power. And in a society that often rewards volume, attention, and reaction, his quiet strength is a subtle rebellion, a form of leadership without display. Yet, despite this inner equilibrium, the world misunderstands him. People often confuse silence with weakness, shyness, or indifference. They misinterpret self-possession as detachment, thoughtfulness as aloofness. In social situations, his restraint can be perplexing, unsettling even, because it defies expectations. But the quiet man is not in need of validation. He does not measure his worth by applause or approval. He measures it by integrity, by the consistency of his actions with his values, and by the depth of his understanding. He does not compete to be noticed, because he knows that presence is more compelling than noise, that influence flows from comprehension rather than performance. Emotional intelligence thrives within him, often in ways unnoticed. He feels deeply, but he processes internally. He can read subtle cues, anticipate reactions, and respond thoughtfully. His patience is more than temperament, it is strategy. In relationships, he offers calm, measured support, rather than impulsive advice. He does not react to every provocation, nor does he broadcast his feelings unnecessarily. This can be frustrating to those accustomed to verbal expression, but it also creates a sense of safety, a predictability, a groundedness that is rare in a world dominated by impulsivity and spectacle. He acts with intention, rather than reacting for appearance. There is also a primal aspect to his quiet. Mystery, after all, is magnetism. People are drawn to what they cannot fully read, to what remains partially concealed. The silent man invites curiosity, not by effort, but by omission. The less he shares, the more space others have to wonder, to project, to imagine. Mystery is a form of influence, subtle yet powerful. It is a psychological truth that humans are attracted to the unknown, and in his restraint, he wields this truth effortlessly. He becomes interesting simply because he withholds. He does not seek attention. He commands it through presence, perception, and silence. Yet this silence is double-edged. It protects, but it can also isolate. The same armor that shields him from harm can also imprison him from connection. Unspoken pain does not vanish, it settles, sometimes festering beneath calm. Quiet men often struggle to express need, longing, or hurt, not because they lack emotion, but because articulation feels risky. Life has taught that words can wound, and thus he measures each one carefully. Isolation, paradoxically, can be both chosen and imposed, a balance between safety and loneliness, reflection and disconnection. Understanding him requires empathy for this tension between strength and vulnerability. Society rarely understands the calculus of his restraint. Boys are often taught, be strong, don't cry, don't show weakness. These lessons, internalized over years, can shape men into quiet figures, guardians of their own inner world. Silence becomes survival, a tool for navigating chaos without losing oneself. Over time, this cultivated quiet may evolve into wisdom. He learns to observe without reacting, to consider without needing validation, to reflect without needing applause. His internal life becomes rich, complex, and meaningful in ways that few can appreciate externally. Spirituality and personal growth often accompany this journey. In stillness, the quiet man discovers his own mind, his own impulses, his own purpose. He learns that listening can be more powerful than speaking, that understanding often surpasses being understood, and that depth matters more than breadth. The calm exterior belies a landscape of thought, reflection, and insight. He becomes self-sufficient, grounded, and perceptive. He learns to identify what is worthy of his attention and what is not. In essence, silence becomes a medium for clarity, a bridge between mind and world. Yet even the most disciplined silence must occasionally find voice. Wisdom is not eternal muteness but selective expression. The man who chooses his moments of speech creates impact. When he speaks, it carries significance. His words are rare gems, valued because of their scarcity and precision. People listen because they sense that what he says is worth hearing. In a culture of incessant chatter, this contrast creates respect, curiosity, and authority. Silence, in this context, amplifies meaning rather than diminishes it. And so, we arrive at the truth of this quiet existence. A man of few words is not necessarily distant, cold, or indifferent. He is a living paradox, powerful and restrained, empathetic yet guarded, reflective yet active. His silence teaches lessons that noise cannot, that presence matters more than volume, that thoughtfulness outweighs impulsivity, that energy is precious and should not be squandered. His inner life is vast, a depth few can fathom, and yet his influence is tangible. The world may mislabel him, but his essence remains intact, defined not by society's expectations but by his own standards. In relationships, friendships, and communities, the quiet man offers something rare: consistency, loyalty, insight, and calm. He may not dominate conversation, but he shapes the environment. He listens more than he speaks, perceives more than he declares, and guides without force. His silence becomes a sanctuary, not only for himself but for those who approach with respect. In his presence, others feel observed, understood, and grounded, even without a single word exchanged. The psychology of a man who doesn't speak much is a tapestry woven from temperament, experience, trauma, philosophy, and conscious choice. It reflects the complex interplay between mind and society, between emotion and expression, between vulnerability and power. His silence can conceal scars, reveal wisdom, or simply be a habit refined over years. It is both a shield and a signal, a form of leadership and self-preservation, a statement that says, I am here, and I am aware. Even if you do not hear me, as we reflect on the quiet man, we realize that our assumptions often mislead us. He is neither simple nor shallow. He embodies the richness of introspection, the strength of restraint, the depth of understanding, and the subtlety of emotional intelligence. He reminds us that influence does not require noise, that mastery of self precedes mastery of others, and that the most profound presences often speak in silence. To know him is to appreciate that life is as much about listening as it is about talking, about observing as much as acting, about understanding as much as expressing. So when you encounter such a man standing apart, quiet, deliberate, remember, his silence is not absence, it is intention, it is strength. It is thoughtfulness, it is empathy, it is mystery, it is protection, it is wisdom. And perhaps most of all, it is a call for patience and understanding, an invitation to look beneath the surface, to respect depth, and to recognize that not every story needs to be spoken aloud to be profound. A man of few words carries a life lived in reflection, a heart tempered by experience, and a mind attuned to the nuances of human behavior. His silence is a language, and if you listen closely, it tells stories louder than any voice ever could. It teaches resilience, empathy, and discernment. It reminds us that depth, thoughtfulness, and presence are often invisible until observed carefully. The quiet man is not missing, he is present, and he is powerful. To all quiet men, your silence is not weakness. It is sanctuary, it is insight, it is influence. But remember, even the calmest waters must occasionally reach the shore. Speak when necessary, love when necessary, and never let your silence be mistaken for emptiness. Because sometimes the loudest souls are the ones who speak the least. And in a world obsessed with noise, those who master silence are, in truth, extraordinary.